aquaculture and poaching for wild harvesting an issue? And if so, if it's a problem, what are some ideas that can be done to?
We've steadily seen the increase in our licenses. But the thing is, you would figure that if your license are increased and your area that you can work is shrinking, that your numbers would have gone down. Our numbers have gone up and up and up. Now this year is a different story. I think you're going to find that in Virginia. The one thing I see in Virginia is they've put it, and all credit to Mr. Wesson, I think you've put it a very good value-added product into the point where these people can take this seed at the end of the season, which are your smaller oysters, and you have a marketability for it. I think if Maryland, instead of, it seems to be everybody's comment is, we got to restrict the watermen more and more and more. Well, I mean, we've gone from a playground to a sandbox. Okay, where are we going to go next? Hourglass, and that's what's going to be, because our time's about over. But what I think we need to do here in Maryland is to look at, we've got, they got a big case down in Dorchester County right now. I know a lot of people that have lost their licenses. I mean, one person mistakenly was diving on a sanctuary, and he's 53 years old, he lost his license. But I think if we went with something like Virginia, where we could go ahead and put a value-added price on these smaller oysters, would keep these guys from what we use a comment of rolling the bottom in, because they would say, oh, wait a minute, man, we can go back and take these oysters and benefit our industry after the season. So, I think you're going to see a lot of self-policing when it comes to that, because see, that seems to be our problem. And also the buyers ought to realize 3-inch oyster is a lot better than a 2.5. And I've seen a lot of 2.5 and 2 3/4-inch oysters disappear from areas. Now, a lot of them don't leave Maryland, believe me, but a fair amount do. But, all due credit to Mr. Wesson and what they've done down there. I think, maybe you could comment, does that add like a value? Do you see that kind of is a little bit of a deterrent for poaching for undersized oysters, being that you have a product that is marketable after the season?
I don't think so. I mean, our seed system is so separate from our harvest area. We still deal with the small oysters during the market oyster season. You can't even use them for seed, so they're really two separate things. I mean, we do encourage people to do the seed, but that usually occurs after the public season is over. So
that's what I mean. Is that it's after the public season is over, you've got a marketable product there.
Yeah,
I
don't think many people poach oysters to take the small oysters and put seed back on the ground. A lot of our poaching is actually done to, we sell a lot of small oysters in aquaculture, and we found a lot of the market we have for small oysters was actually for people putting them back in cages, so to grow out for later on. So.
Put more on ground.
Dave. I promised I would come back with a question tonight. This is for Bill. Seeing your scale that you have out west, I'd love to hear some numbers around your poaching and theft issues and how you go about combating that. And when I saw that one area where you had the oysters over top of a plant product, it just seemed expansive. I'm sure your areas are huge. So how do you all deal with that? From employee numbers and percentages, what do you lose a year, theft and poaching wise?
It's not really that big a deal for us. For one, our crops are underwater most of the time. They're not exposed that often at low tide and season they can have them. And people aren't really equipped. We don't have a public fishery. People don't have dredges and things that they can go out and pilfer them that way. And I think by and large, particularly if you're doing container culture or you have long lines, it looks like a crop. So people understand it's like walking into a cornfield or into an orchard. It's not appropriate to do.
So you have no public fisheries at all?
We have a public fishery for the gooey duck, which is a dive harvest public fishery. And then we have recreational fisheries in our state parks on state tide lands. And then the Native American tribes, there is some public harvest by the Native American tribes, but it's nowhere near as extensive as it has been here in the Chesapeake. So by and large, those cultured crops are recognized for what they are. Theft is not, knock on wood, to date, been a huge issue for us.
I just want to ask him how the native tribes harvest. Is it at low tide with hammer? Is it, like in Virginia at low tide, they harvest on the seaside by hand with a hammer, coal stick? How do the native tribes harvest?
Yeah, so the Native American tribes in Puget Sound, we have, I think it's 19 Native American tribes, and they all have treaty rights to shellfish, both on and off reservation. It's kind of a complicated issue. In fact, it's been, much of my career has been in the courts trying to sort it out. So, yeah, it's mostly all intertidal harvest, although they, with a recent court decision that awarded them 50% of the shellfish resources on public lands, a number of the tribes have geared up and have divers that harvest the geoduck wild fishery. So they do quite a bit of subtidal diving, tribal Native American divers for the geoduck fishery.
The oyster's just a hand harvest?
Oysters is just a hand harvest off the beaches.
Yeah, one question I have for you, Bill. In your oyster industry, it is quite a bit different than what we have here in Maryland. And is that, you find that has to be a very big deterrent with the 10 to 15 foot tide drop? Because, you know, in Maryland here, you can take a boat and go out in the middle of the night and hit a little cove or whatever you got to do. I mean, in your industry, when the tide's out, you're kind of like a sore thumb sticking up out in the middle of a mud flat. So,
we have some pretty rural areas. And you know, not to say that poaching is not an issue. I mean, if there was a representative here from our Department of Fish and Wildlife, they would say it's a big issue. You know, they've gotten some coverage on public TV recently. They're trying to get their budget increased for more patrols and so on. It, you know, becomes an issue, particularly around like our sewage treatment outfalls, where you get a resource that will build up because it's prohibited to harvest there, and then that's a temptation because there's a lot of resource. So you know, people go in on the night tides and harvest from those areas. So they actually do a lot of surveillance at the airport, where they tend to catch a lot of poachers as they try to move stuff out into market. You know, so, you know, same as here. You know, it's a matter of having adequate patrols to patrol those areas. And so, yeah, it's not to say it's not an issue on our farms. I don't think it's a huge issue for us.
Any other questions or comments? Yes.
Just to put a little perspective on the issue, poaching, a lot of people, especially in this area of Maryland, know those terrible watermen, et cetera. And of course, the poachers are terrible, but here's my point. A lot of times, watermen in general get blamed and cast in this light. So I just wanted to basically share a quote. In meeting with these county oyster committees, a lot of time the watermen say, we need the law. We want the law. Bring them down, we need more patrols. So public watermen, public oystermen, you didn't know this, are largely saying we want that guy caught. Catching undersized oysters, that's robbing our future. He's out there at night, gives us a black eye in the media. So I just wanted to set the tone that it is a problem, so I'm not denying that. But let's not cast all watermen, because a lot of them are saying we want the law, catch that guy.
It's only a few bad apples, and that's what you were saying. There's a few bad apples in every bunch. But the state has done a lot recently, the past several years, to cut down on these poachers. And the tagging systems, what everybody has to go through in order to sell legally, what the buyers have to do to buy legally, and the transportation has gotten to be an issue. But like you were saying, there are a lot of watermen who have had their license taken for ridiculous issues, maybe being within 200 yards of the sanctuary. But the sanctuary lines literally moved, according to one DNR police in regards to another. So things happen, and like Chris was saying, all watermen are not bad apples. It's just a few. The other watermen don't want to police them or report them because it is such a tight-knit community. And we all do work together, aquaculture as well as public fisheries. We all do work together. It's just a matter of getting the funding and the state involved with us that we're gonna move forward.
Yeah. And on our leases, we can't even go on our leases without our cell phones ringing. until
Because-
until I changed the color of my boat from white to blue, baby blue. And at one time I had American flag on top, the flag come down and the lake, her phone and my phone both going on. And we hadn't even put the dredge in the water yet. And that's, it was saving us, is all the landowners right around all of our leases, no, so.
The landowners do get involved.
Oh,
They,
yeah.
they want the oyster fishery to,
Keep going, yep,
Good.
so.
Great, thanks.
Chris, I have to go along with your comment about the woman wanting more law, and I can say that firsthand knowledge, when I was a junior and senior in high school, and after I graduated, I worked for a seafood buyer in the lower part of the county. And we bought oysters in the winter and crabs in the summer. And at that time, DNR had an officer who lived in Toddville at a boat station at Farm Creek. He and his partner either were there on the boat, out riding in the car, or in the Boston Whaler, making their presence known. And even without any kind of call or anything, they would come to Hog Island down in Crocham where we bought oysters. They would look at the oysters as they come off the boat. One or both of them would crawl back in the truck and call through these oysters just to make sure that everybody was legal. And that's what we need more of. Over the past 30 years, due to budgetary cuts by the state, we've not had the DNR officers out there that need to be there. And that's what the governor needs to put more emphasis on, is putting resources back into the DNR to hire some more officers to keep everybody honest. Presence goes a long way.
Yep.
Thank you. All right.
Have a seat.
Carla McCullough, this is a question for Jim Weston. In Virginia, when you have issues with poaching and small oysters entering the marketplace, is there enforcement on dealers as well as on the one?
Yes, there is. They're both, can be given the same citation and face the same penalties.
Okay. Anybody else want to weigh in and say anything this morning? I'm not sure. Yes.
I just would like to hear Don Porter's thoughts about the new regulations in Virginia and how they're affecting, in terms of theft and poaching, and how that affects the commercial fishery.
Well, you know, I'm sitting here listening to all these grown women. I think your biggest problem is you've got too much sanctuaries.
You got it.
Yes.
And too much money invested in those sanctuaries.
Hold on, let's let him answer.
I'm getting off of you, but
Calm
in
down.
Virginia, we rotate our rocks every other year. It's been working great. If it worked for that, we'd be out of business right now, and that's all credit to Jim Watson. I think, you know, sitting here listening, I think that's your biggest problem in Maryland right now. It's not that you don't need sanctuaries, but you do need a place to work. In my opinion, those sanctuaries are not doing any good, because you're leaving your rocks open so long. Your spats that are being killed by that dredge. You dredge from what, November until March?
Right.
We're right there in the Pocomoke Triangle on the side of it. We're open 3 months. You guys are open that long. We rotate hours, you all know. You're never gonna have anything unless that's changed.
Yep.
I mean, I see you're listening to y'all's problems, but to me, that's your biggest problem right now. I mean, I've seen what a dredge can do to a rock. We had a shell plant we opened up the first year. We dredged it, we got the big oysters off of it. It was a dredge full of small oysters left at the end of the year. There was a lot of boats sat there and constantly dredged on that rock all year long. In other words, catching one bushel and killing 10. The next year, we come and throw a dredge on that rock that had a dredge full of small oysters. They were all dead. That's when Jim started the 2-year rotation.
Right.
And to me, that's, you know, that's the best thing. You know, your aquaculture, you wouldn't need as much aquaculture if you had some public rock to work on, you know?
problem. So it's a good thing all the way around. If you can get people off the public rock, it's the best thing, you know. It's a win-win situation for everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, it is.
Now can you tell our lawmakers that?
I wish they could. I'll tell you something else too, one more thing. Your DNR does everything as far as game commission. See, our VMRC can do the same thing, but they're there just to protect the oyster, the crabs, and everything else. I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've got private ground in the Pocono Sound. I've had trouble with people from Maryland working on it.
Right.
Simply because well, they shouldn't do it to start with, but the thing of it is they've got their rock stains so bad, they're not only working on my public ground, but they're working on my private ground, but they're working on our public grounds.
Right.
And I've called Maryland DNR, and there's just nothing they can do, you know? And I just wished y'all would try to get this governor to switch this thing around.
Hey, Bob, one quick question I have for everybody on the panel, if they could just answer this question. How many people, and start with Virginia, how many people do you have working in the state involved with the oyster industry? I mean, how many employees, I mean, basically are directly involved in the oyster industry, starting with Virginia?
State employees you're asking?
Employees for the state.
You mean at VMRC?
Well, correct.
4.
Woo, okay. Washington have any?
New Jersey, who else we have here?
That's probably about what we have in New Jersey is
4, okay.
And in New Jersey, we got a little bit different situation because we, you know, it's all a quota system. And if we have to call in the morning when we leave the dock, and we have to tell them where we're going to be working, and we have to tag every bushel as we catch it. And we have to call back in when we get ready to leave to come in and tell them that we're heading in and how many bushel we have, and they dare catch it without no.
So you got hail in, hail out.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That's what we need.
You know, they come on your boat and your number ain't right.
That's right.
You're in trouble.
That's what we need to start doing.
What about Washington? I was just curious, how many do you estimate Washington State?
It's complicated there because we're so diverse, you know, with all the different species that we grow. You know, as far as state employees dedicated to shellfish aquaculture, maybe a couple between all the different agencies. If you had to get to a full-time employee, there might be a couple between the different agencies.
How many we have, Chris?
A lot more than that. I'll be glad to retire if you want one last.
No. We want you to stay, brother, believe me.
Now you also talking about enforcement along with
No, just
management?
Management only.
Okay.
Management only.
All right, I mean, if you throw in enforcement, you talk about public health, like our State Department of Health to do the public health regulations, then all of a sudden you start adding up a lot.
Oh, we'd be in the hundreds here, believe me.
Eric Wisner. I don't think necessarily open up the sanctuaries, you know, all the sanctuaries we have in Maryland, so to speak, will solve the biggest problem. It's basically your few bad apples going after a quick, easy dollar. And that's human nature. That's the few apples. And just like he said, he's got guys from Maryland going over the Virginia line onto his own leases, getting an easier lick of oysters. You know, if they open up the sanctuaries, there's a lot of lease area in the sanctuaries. And within a year or two, when the now sanctuary areas, if they would be open, when that get all caught up, it's just going to be another 200 yards over on somebody's lease. They'll be over there, even though it's hand tong only now, or a sanctuary that has been only hand tong only and turned into a sanctuary. We got guys going out on the sanctuary with power dredging. So it all goes after the easy buck with the few bad apples.
All right, so before we go on to the shell question, any of our panelists want to provide any additional insights?